The tribunal chamber fell silent as Riva Thorne stepped forward. Her boots echoed against the polished obsidian floor of the Kashari warship, each step measured and deliberate. Around her, dozens of alien eyes tracked her movements, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed contempt. The Kashari were a proud species. Feline in appearance, with sleek fur ranging from midnight black to storm-cloud gray, they had ruled this sector of space for 3 millennia before humanity stumbled into their territory. They were warriors, predators, survivors. And they did not forgive betrayal. Commander Varric stood bound in the center of the chamber, his silver fur matted with dried blood, his amber eyes fixed on the floor. He had been a hero, once a decorated officer who had saved countless lives during the Void Wars, but 6 months ago, he had sold classified data to the Sharthi Collective, information that led to the destruction of an entire colony ship. 4,000 souls gone in a flash of antimatter fire. 300 of them had been human. Riva stopped 3 meters from the prisoner. At 32 years old, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen too much death and refused to let it break her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and her gray eyes, the color of earth storms, held an intensity that made even the Kashari elders uncomfortable. "Commander Varric," she said, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. "Do you understand why you're here?" The Kashari's ears flattened against his skull. "I am here to die," he replied, his voice hoarse, "as is right. As is deserved." High Matriarch Thesara rose from her seat, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's cold lights. She was ancient by Kashari standards, her fur streaked with white, her movements slow but purposeful. "Captain Thorne," she said, using Riva's human military rank, though she now served as a diplomatic liaison. "You have been granted the right to witness this execution as representative of the human victims. Do you wish to speak before justice is carried out?" Riva's gaze never left Varric. She had spent weeks reviewing the files, reading the testimonies, watching the security footage. She had seen the money transfers, the encrypted communications, the moment Varric transmitted the colony ship's flight path to Sharthi assassins. She had also seen something else, something the Kashari investigation had dismissed as irrelevant. "I wish to speak," Riva said, "but not as a witness. As an advocate." The chamber erupted. Kashari officers hissed and growled, their tails lashing in agitation. Even Thesara's composure cracked, her eyes widening in shock. "You dare," one of the junior officers began, but Thesara silenced him with a raised paw. "Explain yourself, human," the High Matriarch said, her voice dangerously soft. Riva pulled a data tablet from her belt and projected a hologram into the center of the room. It showed a young Kashari female, her fur a beautiful copper color, her eyes bright with life. "This is Kiara," Riva said, Varric's daughter. "She was diagnosed with genetic cascade syndrome 3 years ago. The treatment costs were astronomical, more than a commander's salary could ever cover. The Kashari medical system, for all its strengths, doesn't provide subsidies for GCS. It's considered a genetic weakness, not worthy of preservation." Varric's head snapped up, his eyes wide with horror. "How did you—" "I'm human," Riva said simply. "We're annoyingly good at finding things people want to keep hidden." She gestured to the hologram, which now showed medical records, bank statements, and a series of desperate messages. Varric sold that information because the Sharthi promised him enough money to save his daughter. They lied, of course. They'd paid him just enough to begin treatment, then withheld the rest until the colony ship was destroyed. By then, Kiara had already died. The Sharthi took his honor, his soul, and gave him nothing but ashes in return. The chamber fell into a stunned silence. "This changes nothing," Thesara said, though her voice lacked its earlier certainty. 4,000 beings died because of his actions. That he was manipulated does not absolve him of guilt. "No," Riva agreed. "It doesn't, but it changes the nature of the crime. This wasn't betrayal born of greed or hatred. It was betrayal born of desperation. The act of a father trying to save his child in a system that told him she wasn't worth saving." She turned to face the assembled Kashari, her voice rising with passion. "You call yourselves warriors. You pride yourselves on strength, on honor, on the survival of the fittest. But strength isn't just about who can swing the sharpest blade or fire the fastest weapon. Real strength is knowing when to show mercy. Real honor is recognizing that sometimes good people make terrible choices when faced with impossible situations. The human speaks of mercy, one elder spat. Her kind murdered each other for millennia over resources, territory, ideologies. What do humans know of honor? Riva's smile was bitter. Everything. We know honor because we've lived without it. We've seen what happens when mercy dies, when every mistake is met with execution, when fear and desperation are treated as unforgivable sins. We climbed out of that darkness by choosing to be better, by choosing to forgive. She walked closer to Varric, close enough that she could see the tears streaking through his fur. I'm not saying you should go free, she told him. I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences, but execution? That's easy. That's simple. Living with what you've done, finding a way to make amends, earning back even a fraction of the honor you lost. That's the hard path? That's the warrior's path. Riva turned back to the Sara. I formally request that Commander Varric's sentence be commuted to permanent service in the reconstruction effort. Let him spend the rest of his life rebuilding what his actions destroyed. Let him save lives to balance the ones he cost. And let future generations of Kishari see that even in the darkest moment, there is a path to redemption. The High Matriarch stared at Riva for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. This is unprecedented. The families of the victims. I've contacted every human family who lost someone on that colony ship, Riva interrupted. 63% support clemency with conditions. 29% want a longer deliberation period. Only 8% demand immediate execution. She paused. Among the Kishari families, the numbers are different. But the fact that even a single human family chose mercy ... Doesn't that say something? The Sara's tail curled thoughtfully. It says that humans are either the most foolish species in the galaxy ... or the wisest. The vote took 3 hours. When it was done, Varric lived, though the life ahead of him would be harder than death. After the tribunal, as Riva walked through the ship's corridors back to her quarters, she passed the crew's nursery. Through the transparent wall, she could see a dozen Kishari cubs playing under the watchful eyes of their caretakers. Most ignored her, but one, a young male with dark gray fur and startlingly bright green eyes, pressed his face against the glass, staring at her with an expression of absolute wonder. Sarek was the oldest of the cubs, merely 12 standard years. Old enough to understand what had happened in that chamber, old enough to know that mercy was not weakness. Riva paused and met his gaze. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, human and Kishari, different species bound by the same capacity for compassion. Then Sarek placed his small paw against the glass. Riva smiled and pressed her hand to the same spot, separated by a centimeter of transparent alloy and connected by something far more powerful. The cub would remember this moment for the rest of his life. He would tell his own cubs about it one day, about the human who chose mercy when vengeance would have been easier. About Riva Thorn, who taught an entire species that forgiveness wasn't a myth, it was a choice. And in that moment, watching the child's eyes shine with newfound hope, Riva knew that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology or their tactics. It was their stubborn, impossible, beautiful belief that anyone could be saved.